We are tracking some weather. It is such a, well, it's going to be a weather alert day. We'll show New Orleans a little bit in how it's the storm that is coming our way. We've already seen damage. Oh,
do it right now.
There it is. Okay. All right, so this is New Orleans. The voice you hear is Chris Mulcahy. He is in the Live Impact studio now. And Chris, this is what is headed our way, or we're seeing like that leading little band of it, aren't we?
Yeah, and you also have to realize that this line of storms stretches all the way through Louisiana up into Tennessee. So it really shows how vast that this system is. So that's really the tail end. Technically, if we're really trying to dial in, the storms that we're likely going to see are over in Alabama right now. And but you can see what our skies are going to look like. All that's going to be the same.
All right, so this afternoon is when we really need to be weather alert, right?
Yes, weather alert. We also say weather aware too, because through the afternoon you got to be aware. And our window right now is 2 to 8 that we're really trying to keep ahead of the storms. But I want to show you exactly what this line looks like. So all these boxes that you're looking at, those are severe thunderstorm boxes. But then also wouldn't be surprised if some of these are going to be tagged over to tornado watches as well. But where we were just looking, over in Louisiana, substantial. So you can see that one box, that's severe thunderstorm warning. Whenever you have this box that is highlighted in this orange color, that means that it has a tornado tag, meaning there's a chance for a tornado along that line. And actually, I can dial it in. This is actually a nice little case study that we're seeing here. Do you notice? And here, let me draw it on here. You have this little bend along here. Mm-hmm. It's those little bends of those kinks that you see here along the line. That's where you can have a spin-up tornado, and that's exactly the case and scenario that we're going to see here. Wow. This is just a little bit different. It's a little bit more humid over there as well. But then speaking of, this is the first time as a meteorologist this season I'm saying, hey, it's humid. And whenever you hit 65, you're really feeling it. So it's called sticky to humid environment. This is also storm fuel. Whenever you're going to have a dew point at 65 to 70, that's what storms love. And you're also going to see a correlation, and I'm going to see in the maps. Notice how it's 66 in Chirac, 62 in Charlotte, and then 65 over in Morganton. The further southeast you go, it's actually more prime fuel, and that's where I think we're going to see the worst of the storms rolling through. So it's all this activity off towards the west that eventually is going to meet us a little bit later on. We're already seeing signs of rain right now off towards the west. Some of these could start to fill in, but it's really this line over here that looks pretty far away, right? Mm-hmm. At one point, it's going to be moving at likely 45 miles per hour, so it's going to be quickly flying, and that typically happens whenever you have a front with really strong internal winds. So the time to be weather alert, weather aware, between 2 and 8 o'clock, damaging winds, isolated tornadoes, and large hail is all going to be a possibility, especially if you have any isolated supercells. Supercells are literally the most classic thunderstorm you see that has that little hook. That is going to be a possibility, but I think it's mainly going to be along that main line. So stay weather aware. You're doing it right now. WCNC Plus is a great way to do it because you've already had me on twice. Once everything starts to quote unquote hit the fan, that's where you're going to have likely wall-to-wall coverage here on WCNC Plus. So it really gives you a nice advantage. Let's roll through our Futurecast. So our Futurecast, it's troublesome sometimes as a meteorologist because we really have to put our best guess of what's going to happen, but really, what model do you like the most? And some update every hour, some update every 3 hours, some update only every half a day. This one right here updates a little bit more regularly, and I like what this is showing because it really is in tune what's happening right now in the atmosphere. So this is the one I trust the most. I'm not going to show you multiple ones. This is the one I believe in. 2 o'clock, this is when our window opens up. At this point, you're just looking at some light rain. If we see any sunshine today, that is the problem. The more sunshine we see, the more unstable the atmosphere is going to get, and we could see a break in the clouds. And also notice it's to the southeast of us that we're really seeing a sizable difference. So it's right in here that I think that we actually crack a little bit more sunshine. And it's in this area from Chirac over to Chester to Concord to Albemarle. That's where I think is going to be the biggest cause of concern, and I'll show you why here in a second. 3 o'clock, we're starting to see some cells get going because I think the northern part of this is going to be ahead of the southern part. And then once you get to about 4 o'clock, here comes the main event. Any of these isolated cells that you're seeing here could potentially be supercells. Supercell, again, rotating thunderstorm, 100% of the time will produce hail. These are the biggest cause for long track tornadoes. The ones we typically see along the line are called QLCS tornadoes or spin-up tornadoes. These are the ones that have the best chance of lasting a little bit longer. So if any of these cells are rotating, that's going to be your hail corp. If everyone remembers last April in Rock Hill, the epic hail that we saw, that's a possibility, believe it or not, today. So it's any of these cells. So do you have any questions before we go any further? 4 o'clock, as we have now opened up our severe weather window.
All right, so you're honing in on the window opens at 2, and so it's kind of a big window. How do you know that as we get closer to 2 o'clock, the direction or where these supercells could start really developing?
Well, of course, our WCNC app is a great tool with radar. Shameless plug there. But no, in all seriousness, it's a tough environment here that you have a big window, and it's not because we don't know the timing. It's just so much is happening. Because look at 4 o'clock right now. The main line hasn't really technically got here, but there's a chance for individual cells ahead of that. So I think we can break it up. Let's call it from about 2 to 4 is your chance for isolated nature of things. It's really 2 to 5 if you live west of I-77. If you're along the I-77 corridor, let's call it really about 4 to 6, and then it's about 5 to 8 really east, because you also have to realize it's tough for us because we're not the app that's going to geosynchronize wherever you are. We're telling an entire viewing area that expands across 22 counties in North and South Carolina. So that 2 to 8 is not just Charlotte. That 2 to 8 is really talking about for the mountains down to the Sandhills and Chirac.
And when it starts coming through, it's going to be fast moving?
Yes, but if we get these individual cells that I'm talking about right here, and these individual supercells, those ones are likely going to be a little bit slower moving. Those typically move around 25 miles per hour. But then once the main line, which I think really organized between 4 and 5, that's going to be quick moving. Notice the organization that we saw here. But now we're about to get to our Weather IQ textbook meteorology. You most likely, maybe, have heard of a bow echo. Raise your hand. Who's heard of a bow echo in here?
I've heard of it.
I've heard of it? Okay. So we're about to show you, our Futurecast is showing an intense bow echo. So a bow echo is pictured like an archer bow. Here, I'm in a box. I didn't realize that. So literally, here, you have a little archer bow and you pull back. That's essentially what's happening here. And if you look really closely here on the map, right around Chester, see a little arch? That's classic. And if you advance frame, it's huge. I've seen what we're about to see here for the 7 o'clock. This signature right here, the northern part and the southern part are called bookends. At that point, that's where you have the best chance for a spin-up tornado. So I'm actually going to take a step back because I really want to dive in deeper exactly what's happening here. It's that right there. I think once you get to about that 5 to 6, it's south of I-85 that I think that we see the worst of it. That's where I think we have the higher wind shear. That's where I think that we have the most instability. So it's really 5 to 8 o'clock southeast of Charlotte that, as of right now, is pinning that we could have the worst of the storms. Because along that bow, that's where you could have wind gusts up to 60 to 70 miles per hour plus. But to the north and south of that, you could have a spin-up tornado. So I think damaging winds are going to be the main event. But that is mean, and that's textbook meteorology for a severe weather widespread wind outbreak.
It sounds nasty as we take a look over Charlotte Speedway here, Chris. So, I mean, it looks ominous?
Yeah.
Right?
But see that spot of blue? We don't want that. Yeah. Because this is we're often deceived because you're like, oh wow, okay, nice, it's sunny out, this is great, okay, severe storms. No, they love that. The worst case scenario you can have is actually a picture perfect, beautiful sunny day, super muggy, and then all of a sudden a cold front drives into that. So the more sunshine that we get, the warmer we get, the more moisture we'll have a possibility of thriving in that atmosphere. So I'm going to try to get us to maybe avoid that scenario. I can't do anything about it. So, but we're already seeing signs that those clouds are breaking. And I mentioned Concord as one of those lines. I really think it's southeast of Charlotte, really a line from Concord down through Lancaster east is, I think, has the best chance for widespread severe weather. But all of us are under the gun. It just says, for what I'm seeing on our Futurecast, that right now kind of seems to be a pinpoint.
A question from Carlene.
Yes.
A while ago, we had our little game show weather.
Yes.
Yes, and we talked about hail, and you mentioned hail as a possibility.
Yes.
And I remember, but we should tell the people at home at what size hail does it really start getting destructive? Because you mentioned the rock and roll hail. Was it last?
Back in the day, you could buy a lot of candy with this, a quarter size. So that's 1 inch in diameter. And hail is on one of the lower ends, but here I want to bring up this graphic to really show you something. Large hail right now looking at a low end, but if you have any of those individual cells, that supercells that I'm talking about, not only could you see quarter size hail, I think you could see up to golf ball size hail. So, and that's exactly what we saw in Rock Hill that caused all that siding damage.
Oh, boy.
I think it was $5 million in damage is what they calculated here. Even though it's the lowest end, I'll never forget that event because it was literally the one cell and then the main line that rolled through didn't really do anything. And that's why I will never underestimate the low chance for hail ever again, because you have that exact same scenario that we had in April that caused that, but it will be a little bit earlier before the main jazz starts to arrive. So I think like 2 to 5 is, or let's call it 2 to 6 is our best hail window.
Once we get through this,
yes,
we're looking pretty nice for the week, right?
Well, I just so happen to have our Guy Roofing 7-day forecast that we'll bring up. I think that we're looking good. This is weird. We might have a shot at 90 degrees, y'all.
Wow.
The earliest that we've ever hit 90 is in the month of March. We've actually done that 3 times. If this does come to fruition and exceeds expectation, we hit 90 degrees, it definitely would be in the top 10 as far as the earliest 90-degree days that we ever had. But that's the problem. I feel like we're skipping over spring. What just happened here?
Yeah, right.
It feels a lot more spring-like Tuesday and Wednesday, but today's humid. This is summertime humidity, and we take a break from that when the front clears, but then that 89 realistically could feel like 93 because it is going to be another humid day, almost borderline muggy, which isn't the best case in scenario.
I mean, that's when we get into this turbulent weather pattern, though, right? The afternoon, unstable air. I see the lightning signal there on Sunday. So another situation potentially.
Yeah, and we're going to go back through this, and I'm going to go through also all the threats that are associated with this.
Okay.
Plain and simple. We got time. So again, 2 o'clock the window opens up. I think west of I-77, you're starting to see some formulation. At this point, individual cells. There's a lightning risk wide open at this point, 2 to 4. Really, that 4 o'clock window, people in Shelby, right around Lincolnton, Gastonia, you're really starting to see some decent formation of these storms, but even Greensboro over to Lancaster, this is that window I talked about, the supercells, the individual ones, the potential hail makers. Those are live on the map. So hopefully we can avoid that, especially if we see sunshine. That's going to be a big possibility. Then it's right around the 4 to 6 o'clock hour that it's crossing the I-77 corridor, 485. The worst part about that, that's our evening commute. Yeah. So our evening commute could be treacherous for people as you have torrential downpours, active lightning, wind gusts up to 60 plus miles per hour. And at this point, I think the hail window is starting to close because you're looking at mainly a cluster of storms. At that point, it turns into more of a wind event. At that point, you could have a spin-up tornado. Isolated tornadoes are never good in that scenario. And then once you get to 7 to 8, it should be clear of our area because it's moving so fast at that point. Here's another look at the Storm Prediction Center. So another weather IQ moment for us. The Storm Prediction Center will give us one of these maps 3 days out. A marginal slight to enhanced risk might sound confusing, but enhanced risk simply means there's a chance for a few tornadoes, scattered wind damage, and large hail. All 3 of those are going to be prevalent along this line. Here at WCNC, we do things differently because if I were to tell you we have a slight risk for severe storms and a marginal risk, what the heck does that mean? But if we have a low, medium to high risk, that's a little bit more of an easier understanding. So whenever you see red, that's where you have to be especially weather aware, and it is right along the I-85 corridor. So that's why I want everyone to be advised, because whenever we have a high chance here, we're talking about numerous thunderstorms, a few tornadoes, same criteria as that enhanced risk as I was telling you. Wind damage number 1, tornado threat number 2, and then hail number 3 as we work our way through today. But then lightning is always a sneaky culprit. So just stay weather aware. Don't travel between those peak windows, about 4 to 6 across the I-77 corridor. I know how life goes. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but if you can, that's your best way to stay safe.
What is this going to do for Western North Carolina?
Western North Carolina.
As they're still recovering.
Rain. We add more moisture to the atmosphere. That helps. What was happening out in California is it was bone dry. Red flag warnings. I think this is going to remove the red flag warnings for the time being. It will come down for a couple of days. Still going to be windy. The rain will help a little bit, but what's really good is looking at the long term. We have another chance for rain on Wednesday, and then we have another chance for rain the following this coming weekend. So it is trending in a good direction, but still we need a lot more of these rain events because it's still going to be another 2 months or so that we're dealing with these really abnormally dry conditions, even with constant rain. So they have a ways to go, but definitely fueling the atmosphere with more moisture, that always helps.
All right. Chris Mulcahy here in the Live Impact Studio once again. Fantastic update. Real great coverage on what we need to be looking at. And if you can stay home or stay in your office, work late, today is leave early. Yeah, today is the day to do it.
Yeah, and the good news is our phones are really good about alerting us about tornadoes, but they aren't always going to do that for severe thunderstorm warnings. So just kind of keep up on that. We have a great app. I personally, I know I should be plugging WCNC's app, but I use something called Radar Scope, and there's also another one that's called Omega. These are the best ones for everyday person to be able to understand the radar. It'll show the warnings. So if you have your own personal one that you can kind of follow if you do need to be out and about, that's the thing to do. And my favorite thing about Mother Nature, she warns you, when thunder roars, get indoors.
Get indoors. Blowing those those pollens, though.
It'll be good today.
It will be good today. Okay.
Because it'll wash it away. If you have that black or white car that is turned into taxi cab yellow,
yes,
it'll get washed
much.
away. However, funny side note, yesterday we were doing yard work. Kim took the hose and was like, I'm going to spray off my car. 2 hours later, it was yellow again.
Yeah.
So,
that is the season.
So financial advice also, don't pay for a car wash. It's pointless. For at least the next 3 weeks or so.
That's right. Yeah, if it's going to rain, I wanted a good rain and just get all the pollen off.
Mother Nature doing it for free today, y'all.
That's right. That's right. All right, Chris Mulcahy once again. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the midday on WCNC Charlotte for
Always a pleasure.
Another view of the weather. We are going to be weather alert this afternoon. Thanks to Chris and the rest of our meteorology team. Brad Panovich joining me on WCNC Charlotte starting at 4.